Hey guys, so today we're going to be taking a look at my new Shaders Plus add-on for Blender. What this add-on is it takes all of the built-in shaders for Blender and incorporates real-time caustics, dispersion, and thin film effects. And what this means is that it puts it on par with some of the more mainstream render engines such as Octane, Redshift, and Arnold. And this allows you to have caustics without having to take minutes to hours per frame for your renders. It allows glass to have the internal dispersion you see, that little rainbow effect. And the thin film introduces like an anodized or pearlescent effect, and this does it physically accurately as well without using the kind of cliche rainbow effect that most people do. So I'm going to show you how to apply these new shaders, as well as a brief overview of what all of the features do, so you can get a pretty good grasp of how to use them. So to get started, let's just apply a new material like we normally would. We can delete the default Principled BSCF, and let's add a new Principled Plus shader. Just apply this, and you're not going to notice any changes right away. This is meant to fit very seamlessly with your normal workflow. So if we want to just make this have real-time caustics, all we'd have to do is just turn on the transmission, and you'll see right away we've got some really nice results. And because these are all the default settings, you're going to notice some like roughness in the glass. That's not to worry. We can just turn that off. That fixes our problem. Now you may have noticed that adjusting the roughness slider doesn't actually affect the caustics themselves. This is just so you can have more control over it. If you do want to roughen up the glass and caustics at the same time, you just change transmission roughness and you'll notice the caustics also get a little bit blurry as well. So with the default settings, caustics comes on right away, and these settings are pretty dialed in for most use cases, but if we take a look here, we've got some strength control. It's very straightforward. The caustics object shadow, this allows you to bring the shadow of your object back in a little bit more, so you can, if you need a little bit of shadow underneath your object where it contacts the surface and stuff, you can bring that back in very easily. Caustics prism allows you to control this kind of chromatic aberration going on that you see. So you see where the colors shift, it goes from white to red and white to blue. You can change that just by bringing down the prism slider. And you'll notice that this does darken the caustics quite a bit, but we can bring it up past the value of 1 in the strength, so let's just do that right now, and you'll see you can make them a little bit brighter. So you have a lot of control over this. And then for caustics imperfections, this is kind of a more stylized niche feature, but it's very helpful in certain cases. So you'll notice that there's these little lines going through the caustics. You can adjust these just with this imperfection slider. So if we crank it all the way down, you'll see what it's made of. If we bring it all the way down, you'll see some more kind of distinct, harsh banding going on with these caustics. So with it off, that's what they look like. And to solve that, we just turn on a little bit. And that helps just kind of soften and blur those bandings so it looks a bit more realistic. But if you want to have them stylized for some reason, you can just turn them off. And with the shader applied to both of these, I'll show you, you can indeed change the color very easily, and it looks very nice. An important thing to know too about the lights and how they affect your caustics is just like with shadows, so if we bring in an object here, just like with normal shadows, the larger the light size is, the softer the shadow is going to be. So you can see when we turn that up, the caustics also soften quite a bit. If we turn it all the way down, just like the shadows, they're going to become more sharp and defined. So my general rule of thumb is to just try not to have it set to absolutely 0. Just try and have just a subtle amount. So you can see like you still got your sharp defined caustics up front, but they kind of fade and taper off. I just found that this seems to look the best. Now for the dispersion feature, this allows us to introduce a similar chromatic aberration effect into our glass or plastic or liquid materials just with a simple slider. And so we can see if we take either our dispersion slider or intensity slider, we can adjust this value pretty good. And similarly to the caustic strength, we can go beyond a 0 or a 1. So if we were to put this at 5, we're going to see much more intense and vibrant effects going on. And for whatever reason, if you wanted to, just for more stylization control, you can adjust the color shift as well. And this is just a simple hue shift. So this changes the range of the color split. Now, moving on to thin film. If you aren't familiar with what thin film is, to break it down simply, thin film is basically that oily sheen you see on asphalt after it rains, or that kind of rainbow effect in a soap bubble. This is what this effect replicates. And normally people would achieve this by just having a color ramp with a rainbow gradient, but true physically accurate thin film does not go through the entire spectrum. It goes through a very narrow band and it starts to repeat a very short section over and over and over again until it just kind of merges into gray. So this feature in Shaders Plus manages to replicate this effect physically accurately. It doesn't go infinitely, but it goes just enough that it's not really a problem to go any further. So if you just notice, we can adjust the value of it so it doesn't have to be very intense. You can make it very subtle, you can add some nice pearlescent effects to it if you want, or you can go very intense and have an anodized effect. So for this, we have IOR, which means index of refraction, and we have width, which basically just describes the thickness of the film. So we can adjust both these parameters and it'll cycle through that range. You can see if we bring down the width, it's not gonna have a very large variation in that thickness, and we're gonna get a much longer color shift. And this is really fun for adding some nice anodized metals or some car paint that looks pearlescent or jewelry, and you can cycle through that range. So you can set how long you want your shift to be, and then you can cycle through that shift with the index of refraction. If you have any questions on how to use it more in depth, you can always reach out to me in the comments, or you can reach out to me on social media. You can find my links in the description, or if you're in the Discord, just feel free to DM me, and I'm always happy to help. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy the shaders.